All right. Good morning, everyone. I think as we have some folks trickle in, I will get us set up and start sharing my screen. Can everybody see the slide presentation okay? Awesome. Love all the head nods. And for folks who don't know me, my name is Shin. I use she, they pronouns, and I am the Executive Director of Network Development for the Oregon Community Food System Network. And I am really excited today to take a few minutes and do some celebrations of all the incredible projects that got funded last year, as well as introduce our new Food Hub grant coordinator, Caitlin, who many of you also know already, and she will share some details about round two, some of the changes that have been made, and and we'll have some time for a Q&A. And so just as a quick little look back, um, so the Food Hub Worker Safety and Infrastructure Grant Program, this was the first round that we did in 2024, and it was funded through the Oregon legislature. And $1.5 million was allocated to OCFSN to distribute in the form of the Worker Safety and Infrastructure grants, as well as direct investment, which Sydney has very thoughtfully been stewarding through the Food Hub network. And so that was passed through Senate Bill 5506. We will be sharing this presentation afterwards so folks can, go in, read more, learn about this, because this was a pretty unique form of funding that we haven't really seen happen in other states yet. And so just a quick look. Back in that 2023 legislative session, it wasn't just food hubs that got funded. It was really this like like forked approach of looking at, all right, how do we take care of producers? So there were the disaster resilience grants for farmers and ranchers that you'll see also stewarded by OCFSN, so that you'll see Andrew on our team has been working on, and that is actually accepting round two applications as well through the end of January. So please feel free to send these to any of our producers. And then we have the Food Hub Worker Safety and Infrastructure Grant, as well as Climate Resilient Farmers Market grants. And so just a little quick call to action here for OFMA, the Oregon Farmers Market Association, are the folks who are stewarding the Climate Resilient Farmers Market grant. And if anyone is interested in joining their committee for reviewing for their grant, applications are due at the end of January as well. And so just a quick overview of round one of these grants. We were able to award grants to 20 food hubs across the state. Each one of those stars is where one of those food hubs is located. And we received $1.8 million in requests for funding, and we had $700,000 available in round one to grant. So I've received a number of messages from folks who have applied in round one, asking about how can we make our application stronger? Or, what were we missing? And in some of those cases, you weren't missing anything. We just didn't have enough money. And so what is really incredible is all of this data that we're gathering from folks about what the needs are, where the needs are, and just the different really unique ideas about how to become more climate resilient. All of that information we are feeding back to the legislature. And so some of the projects that were funded in round one included refrigerated vans for delivery between regions, lots of walk-in fridges, chest freezers, and region coolers, and then a lot of safety items, right? We want to keep folks safe. So lots of anti-fatigue mats, canopies for pop-ups and pallet jacks, and just more ergonomic shelving and, storage containers and whatnot. And so I also want to talk about a little bit about the Food Hub Network, which Sydney, hopefully all of you know already, has been stewarding for the last few years. And really the ability for us to advocate, to push for this funding wouldn't have been possible without all of the work that Sydney has put in, as well as all the folks within the network who have been showing up month after month, year after year to the Food Hub Network. Because, back in 2021, we were able to have a USDA RFSP grant, which pulled together a smaller cohort of food hubs from across the state that really let us do a needs assessment of, where are the different hubs at, even the ones that have been really established for a while, and what are the different ways that, and sometimes timing works out really well. And, right when we finished up that project in, I think, very early or like late 2022 was also when we were able to say, oh, these are all the things that people need across the state. And hey, there's also potentially this bucket of funding from the state. So how do we best steward that for folks, and make sure it gets to the right places? And so the money that got held for reinvestment back into the Food Hub Network, Sydney launched a staff development program that was aimed at improving leadership skills and providing mentorship for, Food Hub program delivery staff, as well as, additional needs assessment and action planning for many of the for-profit hubs that participate with the network, and also expanded worker safety site evaluations to 8 of those hubs. And so here I'm going to pass it over. We're going to actually hear from a couple of the hubs that received funding from round one. So I'll pass it over to Christy.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, so the changes in my hub were pretty monumental. I've always been grateful to OCFSN for all the work they're doing, but spearheading this funding was, as you can see, pretty clutch. On the left, at least my left, is the before. I started this food hub with 2 refrigerators. Well, actually 1 refrigerator, like a 1970s refrigerator from that my neighbor gave me. And then I got another refrigerator. I had a reach-in freezer that I got from a store in my county, and I was using my car, which is a Subaru, which I needed.
You guys to be calm right now and not argue. I'll get the phone if you can just let him have that.
Okay, somebody needs to mute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, so anyway, I used my car. I had styrofoam coolers in this picture. I got some insulation blankets. I had a bunch of cold packs. And anytime I was moving things in the summer, or in the winter, I was blasting the air conditioning and freezing my butt off in the car with the food. So the grant allowed me, oh, no worries, Aaron. The grant allowed me to buy this on the right, this refrigerated van from a company in Cornelius. And so that was a game changer. it runs off the engine. It also can run off of electricity. And so I was able to use that as an auxiliary cooler for when I got a big order of produce. But anytime I was loading produce, it was just a mess. I had to take everything out of the refrigerator, figure out what was what I needed. And it was ridiculous. So with the walk-in cooler, you can see the exterior and the interior with some shelving and some bins. I have more bins now than is in there. And then I did 2 reach-in freezers, but they have 4 doors. So every time I open the freezer, I'm not opening the entire of my inventory to the air. So my produce lasts longer. I can store more. It's way easier for me to pick orders and just things aren't getting smashed into each other. The van is more professional, better food safety protocols. I can transport more product as my business has grown. I've needed to be able to store more, and so now I can. And a lot of people ask about the electricity. It's about, for this whole rig, about $40 a month more, which, one order will take care of. So it's definitely worth the investment. And so I think I'm supposed to keep this short, so I should stop talking.
Thank you so much, Christy, for sharing. And also, absolutely what Sydney said. It's incredible seeing the changes and your upgrades. So thank you for sharing those with us. And then
yeah, hi everybody. Laura Anderson. I have the Yaquina Lab facility and also sit on the board of the Central Coast Food Web that runs that lab facility. So we were able to apply under both entities to outfit our seafood processing areas. One of the key things, the first image on the left is a flake ice maker. Those are expensive. This was part of the infrastructure, the larger bucket of funds, and then also building in that stainless custom rack and getting the Bonner totes and everything was really really cool. We were also able to just do some smaller things like getting some shadow boards to be able to have our supplies really easy to find, to replace, to know. I love these kinds of things. I'm sure anybody working in a shared space can appreciate that. And then over on the top picture on the far right side, this is our fillet area. We had a separate allocation of seafood specific funds from a House bill that allowed us to put up all this RFP, put the floors down, do the sinks, but it didn't cover everything. So we were able to leverage the Food Hub network grant for some of the things under the worker safety smaller number. The adjustable height tables have been great because we have filleters that are 5'2" and 6'2". So now our tables go up and down. They're also mobile. Some things that are not pictured here. We got some rolling carts and some storage containers and just some lugs to move things around. We also did a lockout tag out kit for our power panels, some anti-fatigue mats, a cold storage parka, and some storage cabinets, like a safety cabinet for aluminum gas cylinders and lots of little things like that. So it was just really cool. What I really appreciated about working with Sydney and Shin and the team was just how simple the application process was compared to a lot of grants. And then also just having really easy reporting. It didn't have to be too much. Just demonstrate to us that you did what you said you were going to do. We got hung up a little bit on our timeline because our floors and walls weren't down before these things were installed. So in fact, the installations you see here were just completed a few weeks ago, but we had the purchases already done and in place. So the items were there and purchased within the grant timeline, but the installation just happened. So we're excited for our fillet season coming up this spring in a couple of months, and just can't wait to get a lot of people in here cutting fish. Thank you to the whole program team.
Thank you so much, Laura, for sharing. And then one final thing is, so this year, in this legislative session, which just started, the House Bill 2979 was proposed, and it proposes renewal of food system resilience funding, which includes the 3 programs that I was sharing about. This one for the Food Hub Worker Safety and Infrastructure Grants, the disaster resilience for farmers and ranchers, as well as the farmers market climate resilience. And so there will be opportunity for folks to give testimony during the 2025 legislative session about the impact of this funding. And that can be done in written or call-in testimony with guidance from Friends and Family Farmers, ORCAN, and others. You won't hear directly from myself or Andrew, so staff of OCFSN. But you will definitely, if you are a part of the Food Hub Google group email list, we'll share, there will be more information sent there on how to engage and how to advocate. And with that, I am going to pass it over to Caitlin and let her take you through the round 2.
Thanks, Shin. Hi, everybody. My name's Caitlin Seyfried. There's a lot of faces in here that I recognize, but if you haven't met me before, I'm new to this role at OCFSN as the Food Hub Grant Support Coordinator for this grant and this round. My pronouns are she, her. I live in Astoria, Oregon, and have been involved in various parts of OCFSN for a while now. I previously worked at the North Coast Food Web here in Astoria that has been operating as a food hub for a bit. So looking forward to chatting with more of you, reconnecting with folks, and meeting some new hub staff as well as we go through this round. And these are the topics we'll cover today in this info session. Quick reminder at the top is that all of these grant materials, all of the information I'm going over can be found at the OCFSN Food Hub Grant webpage that's listed there. And the grant application is not out yet, but it will be posted by February 1st. And we will send an email announcement out when that's posted. But the website currently has an FAQ sheet, the RFP and guidelines document, and then some templates and tools that can help you with your application. So you can go ahead and review those things if you want to get a jump on some of that. Yeah, this is, as Shin was mentioning, this is state funding, a chunk of that funding for the Food Hub Worker Safety and Infrastructure Grant Program. That's managed by OCFSN, and the funding was for 2 rounds. So round 1 is completed in 2024, as many of you know. So this is round 2 in 2025, and the grant is reviewed by a grant committee that's put together by OCFSN, and we're making sure that those folks are folks with expertise in local food systems and food hubs, so they know you all and they know the operations of food hubs pretty well. And there's $350,000 of available funding in this round, so about half of what was available in round 1. And there's 2 types of grants, as the name of this program implies. They're pretty straightforward. There's worker safety grant. Those projects must improve job quality or worker safety at your hub, and require that you have a worker safety plan in place for any of the new equipment that you're getting. And then the infrastructure grant, like it sounds, is for any hard assets infrastructure for your hub that you can show that they would strengthen and expand the capacity of your hub. And you have to be able to demonstrate that the equipment is right sized and appropriate for your hub's volume in your grant application. and just demonstrating your need for the equipment. And that also will require a worker safety plan for any new equipment. Cool. This is a little matrix that shows you the 2 grants that I was just talking about. So the 2 categories, worker safety and infrastructure, and then the 2 scale categories, so the 2 sizes of grants that you can apply for. So there's low barrier, which is under $5,000, and then capacity building, which would be applying for $5,000 or more in either of those categories. And there's some examples of what you could include in your projects for all of those different categories, but these are just examples. It's not a comprehensive list. Obviously, the capacity building examples are bigger ticket items, bigger projects. And for capacity building, those are for hubs that are more well established, and we qualify that as you've been operating for a year or more, and that you have higher volume than if you're applying for low barrier. But yeah, the only distinction that we ask you about there is that you've been operating for over a year. So a little bit more about those different categories is that you can apply for each worker safety and infrastructure in the same round, but you cannot apply for the different sizes. So you have to pick either if you're falling the low barrier category under 5,000 or you fall in the capacity building category, you could apply for worker safety and infrastructure for both low barrier or for capacity building, but it's not exactly like mix and match on that. Pick the size category that you fall into, and you can also just apply for one of those. You don't have to apply for worker safety and infrastructure at all. So you can just pick one. Some other details that are the same from round 1 is that applicants can be awarded partial funding. There's no requirement that you have matching funds for this grant. The funding is upfront payment. It's not through a reimbursement system. And also you can use this funding if another grant is requiring you to have a match or a cost share. So you can keep that in mind if you're applying to multiple grants, which I'm guessing many folks are. Okay, the juicy stuff is changes for round 2. So if you are applying it for round 1, these are just some slight changes that we've made in this round to kind of prioritize different folks as we saw fit for this second round of funding. First, and I'll go over this in the following slides, is we have a few additional requirements for eligibility to apply for the grant. In the application, there's going to be just one form for both worker safety and infrastructure. So you get all that done in one form if you're applying for both. And also in the application, we added a section to explain your implementation plan because we heard from hubs in round 1 that sometimes they needed to think through more about like staff time needed and the timelines for ordering and installing equipment. Because the grant period, the time that you need to have everything done and reporting is expected is a 6-month time period. So there's a section in the application to kind of explain that you've thought through implementation. The other things that are slightly updated are the grant timeline, of course, and there's a few additions to the priority rubric, which is just how the grant committee is kind of scoring different applications for funding priority. So the easy one is timeline. As I mentioned before, the applications will be posted on the grants page by February 1st. They'll close a month and a half later, March 15th. A month later, awards will be announced. A month later, funds will be delivered. And then that 6-month timeline, so around November 2025 is when we'll expect and remind folks about submitting their reporting. Cool, eligibility. There's an exciting new screening tool for eligibility to help you understand if your hub is eligible to apply in round 2. So that the link to that is on that Food Hub grant page, and we can find it and put it in the chat as well, so you can go through it now. But the same as last year, your your hub has to be a legal entity in Oregon, so business or organization, just as long as you're a legal entity in Oregon. You need to be able to meet the working definition of food hub, which is, there's a lot of details in the RFP and guidelines document, but it outlines a lot of hub and hub-like activities that are serving more than one farm or ranch. So if you don't call yourself a food hub, but you might fall under that category, go ahead and take the eligibility screening quiz and see if that answers some of your questions, or just get in touch with us, because we want to work with folks who maybe aren't traditionally considered a food hub as well. The things that have changed slightly for this round is that there's a new process around determining if hubs are active participants and collaborators in the Food Hub network. So there's a little bit in the application where you can select if you attend Food Hub network meetings or if you collaborate with OCFSN or the Food Hub network in other ways. And we can get more in depth into that, maybe if people have more questions about that in the Q&A, but most folks are going to be attending those network meetings, but we wanted some more ways for folks to be collaborating with OCFSN and still apply for this grant. Finally, we wanted to prioritize hubs that did not get funding or did not get as much funding in round one. So if your hub received $5,000 or more, so one of the capacity building grants in round one in 2024, then you're not eligible to apply for this grant, or for this round, excuse me, this round. Oh, sorry. Yeah, the priority rubric is, like I mentioned, how the applications are scored and compared. And so the two new pieces for 2025 and this round two are just around what county your hub is headquartered in or is serving. And so we just wanted to prioritize hubs that are in counties that weren't represented in round one. So they're listed here. And you can, if this is really hard to read, that's also in the RFP and guidelines document that we have. But the first few priority pieces are the same as last round. You get extra points if your hub has leadership representing BIPOC community, immigrant, and refugee communities. And also if your hub is not traditionally, if you traditionally don't have a lot of access to this grant funding, which is if you're a cooperative or LLC or a for-profit business, you have less access to grant funding. And then same as last time, if you're headquartered in a smaller town, under 2,000, you get some 20,000 people, you get some points, and then 20,000 to 50,000, you get some points. And a couple of details about reporting, like Laura mentioned earlier, trying to make this pretty straightforward and easy for you. The final reports for grant awardees are due 6 months after the funding is received. And the report is just asking you to upload some photos or videos about your project, a short paragraph that's describing the outcomes of your project, any challenges you had, the impact on your hub and your operations. And for capacity building grants, those $5,000 or above grants, we're asking for receipts and some accounting of the spending, and that can also be photos or copies of things as well. Cool, we're getting to the end here before we do Q&A, but just a reminder that the application link will be posted by February 1st to the OCFSN Food Hub Grants page. And starting in February, I'll send this out via email, but I'll have at least 2 info sessions in February like this, and we can dig into the actual application a bit more and cover this information and do more additional Q&As for folks that couldn't join today. And also I'll have a link where you can sign up for appointments to meet one-on-one with me and help go through the application or answer any questions. But we do have a link to a when to meet page where you can, yeah, thanks Shin. Shin just posted that in the chat. So if you have times or days that you'd want to suggest that we do those info sessions in February, you can give us feedback on that when to meet link, just putting in the day and time that you're available. And that'll all be sent out over the OCFSN listserv, the Google group email. All right. Any questions? We'll have time for Q&A. And just a reminder that if you want to head to that Food Hub grant page for all the materials and supplies and that eligibility screening tool that I mentioned.
And also we will share a copy of these slides to everybody after this call and for folks who couldn't make it. So don't feel like you are going to miss anything if you didn't take notes.
I see Hannah says, curious about the matching funds. If there are grants on your radar, these would qualify for. Wondering about the solar REAP grants. I'm not 100% sure, Shin, if you want to.
Yeah, I don't have specific grants that are on my radar for what you can use these for, but I think what to keep in mind is this is state dollars and state funding. So sometimes there's like, that's one of the stipulations for, thank you, Sydney. They'd be used for as match for federal funds.
And then I see a question about the Food Hub network collaboration / participation requirement that I mentioned. So that was it's one of the eligibility requirements for the grant, is that you can say that you are participating or collaborating with the Food Hub network or OCFSN in some other way. And in the application, how that's going to play out is there's a question where you can say, yes, I've attended meetings or collaborated with or presented at the Food Hub network meetings with Sydney. So that's the first level. If you've done that, check, easy, moving on. The second level is if you haven't been attending meetings or collaborating in some way, but Sydney DeLuna is here, can vouch for you and say that you've been collaborating in other ways with the Food Hub network or OCFSN, then you can choose that. So that's the second rung. And then the third rung is if any other organization can vouch for you that you've been participating in OCFSN in any other way, then that's your third option. Thanks, Shin. Yeah. So it's a little, trying to simplify it, but giving you as many options as possible to say, like, yes, I've been involved in OCFSN in some way, if you haven't clearly been participating or collaborating with the Food Hub network. Does that answer that question for you, Zoe? Yeah, Sydney says, for example, if you don't come to meetings, but you've been chatting with Sydney about something or working on another project outside of meetings.
Yeah, and one of the main reasons too that we want to be able to, we want folks to be actively participating when they can or collaborating in all the different ways is that, we all show up differently, and it's always more generative when we show up in the ways that we can. And, I think what all of you and Sydney too has been building in the Food Hub network over the last few years is just like this incredible amount of trust and collaboration across the state and just like vulnerability. And this work is really hard. And sometimes, you know, we need to take turns on holding that for each other.
Well, I see a question about how specific do we need to be in the application about the make and model of a vehicle? I'll give my answer and then I'll see if Shin has a better answer. I would say as specific as you can be within reason to get a good estimate of the cost of the vehicle, because what we would want to avoid is the cost being significantly different if you were awarded funding and then you're suddenly not able to buy a vehicle with the funding. That's what we would want to avoid. So if there's like a range and you can explain those like different factors, that would be my answer of getting as close as you can. But yeah, anything else, Shin?
No, I think that's the big piece of it. And I know, you know, in the round one applications and for this one too, we made the request of, you know, if you are asking for multiple items to be funded, then, you know, please let us know what your priorities are. And this way, if we can only give you partial funding, because that was also what happened with round one, was that, you know, we funded 20 different hubs, but not every hub was able to get the full award of what they had requested. And so whatever help you can give us in, you know, how much money you need to get your prioritized project done, you know, that would be great. Hey, Zoe, we can make sure that if you drop your email for Caitlin, we will make sure that you get added to the Google group. But I do recall some of the emails you've sent and I've responded as best as I can. But yeah, we definitely want to make sure that you're getting what you need. And then I lost my train of thought. But yeah, what other questions do folks have? And also, this is not your only opportunity to ask them. So
Can you just remind me the deadline for this? It comes out February 1st and closes when?
March 15th.
Okay, and then funds have to be spent by,
Ideally, November 2025 is when the final reporting, we'll ask for your final reporting. So that's a 6-month window.
and for transparency's sake, we know life comes up. And so we just ask for folks to be communicative with us, and we will work with you in the best way that we can.
I just have a general question. I don't know that you can even answer, but we have a major issue with contractors here not actually showing up after they give you the quote and then you schedule for them. Did anyone have that issue with the first round, and how do you deal with it? Because contracts or quotes can be drastically different. So like if you got a quote from 2 contractors for this much and then they didn't show up and you had to deal with someone else. So was that a problem, or how do you did that? I don't know. What do you, yeah, carry, right? I can't get anyone to show up after, I mean, that's already an issue. I can't even get them to show up for a quote that I need for this.
Yeah, it was difficult. You just have to keep on people and call them and text them. And I just got quotes and then just I don't think I doubled them, but I definitely rounded them up just to make sure, because things always cost more than you think they're going to. Yeah.
I will say I had a horrible time with contractors. It was like a 9-month wait just to even get on their schedule, and then getting them to like consistently finish the job. You do have to just constantly like stay on them and give them a timeline. I will say after this experience this last year, I have written my own contract that I'm gonna ask the next one to sign, that outlines like behavior while they're here, how they can access the property, and those timelines and days that they can, because I have like livestock roaming and gates and security to go through. And that I don't allow smoking or some of those things that affect disease to my crops. And so my contract will kind of set some expectations for their behavior when they are working on my property. So I would definitely include a timeline in that, and an out if you have to go with someone else to finish the job, which is what I had to do. I went through 3 plumbers to finish my plumbing job.
I recommend making friends with a general contractor, because then you have the guilt factor. I definitely had to use that a couple times to get it done.
Yeah, actually, I'll add that some general contractors have a really good working relationship with subcontractors. So, and that's how I found some of my really good subcontractors. I just went back to the general contractor and says, okay, thanks for doing the plumbing. So do you know anyone who could do drywall now? And they just redirected me and helped me connect. So if you find like really good general contractor, they can help you connect to some other good subcontractors.
Wait, so you didn't use a general contractor? This may be off topic. Anyway, I used a general contractor, so then it was their problem to get the people in that needed to come in, not mine.
I didn't need a general contractor for a plumbing job. I just needed a plumber. But then we got part way in and they realized that like before you install your hot water heater tank, you really need to insulate and put your wall board up. So I kind of had to like stop the plumbing and do some other work that wasn't included in my grant funded project, and then finish the plumbing.
Well, it seems like we don't have any other questions. We'll make sure that we capture some of those resources that were shared in the chat to share back out. And again, thank you so much for everything that y'all do in your communities. And we're so excited about the projects that have gotten completed and the projects to come. So we look forward to seeing you again. And we're going to give everybody back 15 minutes to their day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your week, y'all.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.